Welcome to Starspeak with astrologer Maureen Richmond. Here's where you'll find the latest news on what's up with the heavens. Looking for the inner message from outer space? This is your place. So join me in welcoming your host, astrologer Maureen Richmond.
Welcome, star friends. I'm Maureen Richmond, and you're listening to Starspeak on the UNX Digital Broadcasting Network. This is your source for everything paranormal, supernatural, and ufological. Right here, Starspeak airs every Wednesday night at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 5 Mountain, and 4 Pacific. We're glad to have all our listeners coming in from all the different platforms. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Today's date is Wednesday, September 6th, the year 2023. If you're looking for the inner message from outer space tonight, well, you're in the right place. So sit back now and get ready to enjoy a tour through the zodiac and to the stars beyond. Tonight, I will cover first the legacy of the star people. That's right, the lore of astrology is the legacy of the star people. Next, the energies we're feeling now, this week, from September 6th until September 13, including the waning moon, the still retrograde Mercury, and the now direct Venus. Third, an astrological tribute to the late and great ufological researcher, UNX's own Lee Spiegel, who passed on August the 14th after more than 40 years of service to the field of higher consciousness and ufological studies. So we'll be talking about the astrology of the soul of Lee Spiegel and its imprint and plan for his most recent incarnation here on this planet with us. We'll miss him. Fourth, long-term trends, Saturn in Pisces and the role of the subconscious. Next up, the inner workings of astrology, the legacy of the star people. It's logical to ask the question, well, where did astrology come from in the first place? Oh, it came from the sky. That's the answer. In fact, it came from the stars themselves. Indeed, it came from the study of the stars and humanity's interest in the stars. So why was humanity so interested in the stars? Well, in ancient times, the pageant of the night sky was the most important form of entertainment and spiritual knowledge that was available. With no light pollution, it was possible for humanity to see the star-strewn night sky and to marvel at the incredible panoply of creation and the richness of creation and the evidence of infinity. Sure, yeah, that caught the attention of everybody living on a daily, nightly basis. Every 24-hour cycle, just about, there was an opportunity to view the drama of the heavens. If there wasn't a cloud cover, that's what could happen. So much of the year, it was possible to study the constellations, the bright stars, and to watch the planetes, the planets that moved amongst the fixed stars on their seemingly own propulsion. I didn't know at that time exactly what it was. There were the moving lights and there were the stationary or fixed lights, the fixed stars. Interestingly, in all the great spiritualities of the ancient Mediterranean world, there were deities in their theological systems that were depicted as bird-like, having wings, with the capacity for flight. Really, the capacity for flight, that was it. In other words, the ancient mind associated the gods and goddesses of antiquity with the power of flight. Well, that's something, of course, that you acquire, or an entity acquires, if one has an existence above and beyond the terrestrial sphere. Yeah. Birds, with their wings and capacity for flight, were the nearest thing that humanity could compare that to. Legends are many that have the inspiring deities at the base or creation of the ancient civilizations, with an emanation from the sky or the stars above, bringing different forms of knowledge and wisdom to the people of the earth. For one thing, the capacity to reckon time by the observation of the celestial sphere. Yes, that particular skill or ability is associated in a number of theological traditions of the ancient world, with bird-like figures, or figures that were depicted with the head of a bird or the wings of a bird, so that they could fly, so that they could come down from the higher spaces and communicate on earth with people. One particular example of a bird-like god was the figure of Jehuti or Tehuti or Thoth in the Egyptian theological pantheon. So Jehuti was portrayed as a humanoid creature with the head of a beaked aquatic bird native to the Nile, known as the ibis, I-B-I-S, the sacred ibis. Jehuti was presented as the ibis-headed god then, the bird-headed god. Jehuti Thoth, also within the Egyptian theological pantheon, was responsible for revealing to humanity the sciences of measurement, and that included the measurement of distance in the skies, sciences of number, such as arithmetic, the science of perceiving the relations of the celestial bodies, which became astronomy, and its closely related field of lore, astrology. And Jehuti was also ascribed as the origin of writing and language and the capacity to communicate in an intelligent manner. Where did Jehuti come from? From above. It fluttered down from above. That's the mythological analogy, which explains where the knowledge of Jehuti, the ibis-headed god, came from. There were other cultures in the ancient Middle East that connected their seminal deity figures with the upper regions, the sky or the distant stars, including the Babylonian, the Chaldean, the Sumerian, and the Greek cultures. For a long time, Egypt was the center of mystical initiation for the entire classical world of the Mediterranean. So many of these subsequent theologies are related to or had their origin in the Egyptian mythology. And by the way, mythology is not a second-class form of knowledge at all. In today's English language usage, the word myth is often used interchangeably with falsehood or concocted story or fabricated item, or an insubstantial, undocumented assertion. Oh, that's just a myth. But in the ancient world, myth was a way of pictorially and symbolically portraying the origins of society and the beginnings of knowledge. So in these myths are recorded the secrets at the base of knowledge in our classical world formed the basis for the Western world's philosophy and forms of science and knowledge. And where did those beings come from? They came from the stars above. Specifically, this tradition is reflected in a number of myths and pictorial representations in the ancient Middle East. Jehuti, or Thoth in Egypt, is by some reckonings the god who transmitted the notions, concepts, and necessary arithmetic and measurement sciences to establish the field of astrology. Not just astronomy, but astrology. Astrology and astronomy were almost one and the same in the beginning, because the ancient peoples were interested in getting divine signs from the sky, not just measuring the physical properties of the universe in the way that astronomy does in modern times. Their purpose in studying the sky was to understand the mind of the cosmos, or as it is said in the Western tradition, the will of the gods. And who were the gods? Well, they were the figures embodied in the celestial bodies, in the stars and in the planets. The ancient mind understood those forms of existence as superior to the human knowledge, superior to the human capacity, connected with greater wisdom, and able to speak to the world below. In the early period of the BCE times, when the Hermetic field of knowledge was developed, this idea was encapsulated in a simple little dictum: as above, so below. Yeah, meaning as go the heavens, as goes the celestial sphere, so go the affairs on the face of the earth. As go the heavens and the celestial sphere above, so go the activities of the human world, human relations, and the fate and destiny of nations on the face of this earth. As above, so below. It's a simple concept that asserts the unity of all of space. It just simply asserts the unity of all space, draws a relationship between there and here, and assigns that relationship to a function of causality, in other words. So that's a big idea to take in mind, but it's part of the legacy of the star people. That was what they conveyed through the early mythological teachings that are still reflected for us in iconography and sacred texts. Next up, feeling the energies. Welcome, star friends. This is Maureen Richmond on Starspeak for the UNX Digital Broadcasting Network. I'm glad to have you listening in. You know, we're all feeling energies that are circulating in the solar system and really from the galaxy beyond into the solar system all the time. Some of these energies we feel more prominently than others. Right now here on Earth and in the human sphere, we are experiencing the energies of the waning moon. The moon has a tremendous effect on us psychospiritually. It affects our thinking, our moods, and our bodily responses to life. And the reason for that is because we're just part of this energetic ecosystem that we live in called the solar system. When the moon is waning, it correlates to a period of decrescendo in the intensity with which we experience life. Now you can contrast this to last Wednesday, 1 week ago, Wednesday, August 30th, with the full moon and the days right around that period of time. The days right around that period of time, right as the moon is getting full, the first day before it's technically full, and then the day of the technical full moon, which was August 30th, and then the day after. In every lunar cycle, the 3 days clustered right around the exact opposition of the sun and moon correlate to a high point in human experience. Emotions are intensified, realizations are intensified, anxiety is usually intensified. Oftentimes, people have physical responses to this, or they get excited and sometimes act irrationally and end up hurting themselves or others out of overwrought emotional states. And this fact is well known by law enforcement personnel and medical care people. I've heard them talk about it, joke about it. They say, if the lunatics are out, that's right, the Luna from the moon. Yes, those who respond to lunar energies really do so at the full moon. That intensity does not last. It spikes or peaks right around the exact opposition of the sun and the moon. So that's the definition of a full moon, with the sun on one side of the earth in the middle, and the moon on the opposite. As the moon continues in its orbit around the earth, it gets out of that arrangement with the sun and the earth, and we no longer have that electromagnetic resonance or field that's caused by that precise opposition. And as a result, we have a decrescendo, or a dropping down, or a decrease, or frittering away of all those intensities and urgencies that we felt around the full moon. And sometimes this is a good thing. It's different in every case, for each person, I should say. But oftentimes, there's such a tremendous amount of emotional pressure and a sense of urgency around the full moon that you don't find at other points in the lunar cycle. And so the subsequent points in the lunar cycle oftentimes provide an opportunity for insight, a calmer way of looking at the recent events. And we're in that now. We are in the waning phase of the moon on September 6th. Physical energies just kind of slow down a little bit. We can sleep better. We can relax a little bit better. We get a little bit of distance from whatever it was. It was so compelling and rattling our cages at full moon. We get a little distance from that, and we're able to look back and see what happened, think about it perhaps a little bit more analytically. Oh, yeah, that distance can be very good sometimes. That's where we are right now. At the same time, Mercury is still retrograde. It went retrograde on August the 23rd and will remain so through September 14th. And Mercury retrograde is kind of notorious for correlating to periods of confusion, complication, sudden changes in points of view, alterations of plans, all those kinds of things that tend to be disruptive. And there's a basis for that in the astrological measurement system, because Mercury is only retrograde a very small amount of the time every year. 3 weeks, 3 times each year. That works out to about 17% of the time. And so it represents a departure from the norm, a different way of doing things, changed conditions externally and internally. And we're now there through September the 14th. How you can use this positively is to get some perspective on recent past history through study, reflection, thought, meditation, or even hypnosis. Because if there's anything that's consistent with the motion and the meaning and the implication of retrograde Mercury, it's hypnotic trance for the purpose of retrieving past life memories or memories of experiences had in recent years. Either way, it's also very consistent with the notion of using hypnosis to alter or change habit or thought patterns, self-concept, and to develop more constructive approaches to solving one's problems. So if you're looking to break some old habit routines, whether they're related to smoking or inappropriate intake, or you're looking to change patterns of negative thinking, it's a great time to do that when Mercury is retrograde, through also going back within, deep within the self, to the subconscious. And I'll talk more about the role of the subconscious later tonight in segment 4. But for right now, we're going to take a break. And next up will be the, wait a minute, I've got to talk about Venus. That's right. Yeah, it's not just retrograde Mercury that's changing the situation. No, not at all. We have some real action with Venus. And a few other things to talk about before we can go on to the break. Yes, Venus turned direct, or reassumed apparent normal forward motion in the zodiac on Sunday, September 3, ending a period of about 7 weeks that Venus was perceived in retrograde motion. So what does Venus relate to? Well, it relates to human relationships, to the capacity for bonding, for closeness, for understanding other people and appreciating other people. Venus has astrologically has its roots in the Greek goddess Aphrodite, who is the love goddess and the archetype of connectedness and appreciation for beauty and the beauty in other people. So when there's some perturbation astrologically in Venus, as above, so below, there's also some perturbation in human relations. And we just had about 7 weeks of that right now, and a recent turnaround with Venus turning direct. So it's well within the range of expectation that feelings and attitudes within relationships, especially close relationships, love relationships, marriages, and dating relationships, are going through some buffeting and changing here. And reevaluation, because retrograde Mercury is working on the situation as well. Yeah, so we've got those two things going on. Today, September 6th, the sun is conjunct retrograde Mercury at the 14th degree of Virgo, really intensifying the reevaluation process associated with retrograde Mercury. So we're kind of at a point where that's really true, really happening, really going on. And these are influences that affect all of us. I'm talking about collective influences that affect all of us, no matter what our charts are like. Now, of course, the individual has specific conditions that result from transits to his or her own chart. I'm going to talk about some of those in segment 3 in just a moment. But one more item before we go, and that is the second major influence for the week ahead, which is a lovely trine between the sun at 16 degrees Virgo and Jupiter at 16 Taurus, becoming exact on Friday, September 8. That's just a couple of days away from now. And I'm glad to tell you that it's going to evoke from us a feeling of relaxation and peace, stability, and steadiness that we really need after all these intensities that we've had of late. In fact, we've had quite a few. In the month of May, we had a very strong astrological configuration that disturbed a lot of people. Again, in late July, we had the Mars-Saturn opposition, which knocked a hole in a lot of people's souls, and we're still working on healing that right now. And then here in July and August, we had retrograde Venus, which is a little difficult to adjust to and may have been associated with many misunderstandings. And retrograde Mercury. So we could use an interval of peace and serenity, self-acceptance, and maybe a little bit of a cosmic perspective that comes from this lovely Sun-Jupiter trine as it matures on Friday, September the 8th. And so those are the main developments of late and in the week ahead. Now, Mr. Producer Man, let's take that break, and next up will be our astrological tribute to the late and great Lee Spiegel.
It's almost here, ladies and gentlemen. The UNX Network Year 2 anniversary at XCon 2023. XCon is being held this year from October the 30th to November 1st at the beautiful Oasis Hotel and Conference Center in Springfield, Missouri. Top speakers include host of America Unearthed, Scott Walter, plus Haley Ramsey, Sev Talk, UNX's very own Maureen Richmond and Dan Terry, Mindy Toutfest, Harriet McFeely, Forrest Crawford, and many more. And they're all coming to deliver new information on topics like UFOs, alien encounters, cryptids and ancient secrets, and real hauntings from the afterlife. Join us for the film premiere of A Haunting in Blue Hill. And don't miss the Mad Hatter Paranormal Halloween Bash, Banquet, and Costume Contest on All Hallows Eve, October 31st. So join us as we close out the 2023 conference season. Info and tickets are available now at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com, and we'll see you there.
Welcome back, Star Friends. This is Maureen Richmond with Starspeak. Yes, the gentleman we're going to be speaking about now, the late and great Lee Spiegel, certainly did have his own UFO encounter, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Lee Spiegel was an inspiring figure within ufology. For over 40 years, he turned out creative project after creative project, bringing to public awareness essential facts about our relationship with our greater cosmic environment through the UFO experience. He was tireless in that, and his creativity really knew no bounds. He was gifted in the area of writing and producing, as well as performing. And he was, there he is. And in his early years, before he became a leading ufologist, when he was interested in becoming a musician. So let's another picture of him as a musician. That's Lee Spiegel there. He's a sun sign Taurus. You can really see that in that particular facial view right there with the beautiful facial shape and the high cheekbones. Sun in Taurus. He was born on May 8th, 1949, and just recently passed away. His passing date was August the 14th, 2023. But he's born on May 8th, 1949, and I want to give you his astrological placements now of the sun and the moon and the planets, even though I don't have a birth time for him yet. And if we get that, then we'll go back in a later show and talk all about the chart itself. But for right now, I know the sun, moon, and planetary placements. On his birthday, the sun was at 18 degrees of Taurus, so he's a sun sign Taurus. The moon was either in late Virgo or early Libra, and that will be determined once we get a birth time for him. Mercury was located 9 degrees of Gemini. Venus, 24 degrees of Taurus. Jupiter, 2 degrees of Aquarius. Mars, 7 degrees of Taurus. So that's the Sun, Venus, and Mars all in Taurus. Saturn, 29 degrees of Leo. Uranus, 28 degrees of Gemini. Neptune, 13 degrees of Libra in retrograde motion. Pluto, 14 degrees of Leo. And the lunar north and south nodes at 26 degrees of Aries and Libra, respectively. Each one of these positions is important because they reflect the intention or the intent or the purpose of the soul of Lee Spiegel for that present incarnation, which just recently concluded. That's true for any person's astrological birth chart. It reflects the intention of the soul. And the degree positions are as important as the sign positions. There are 30 degrees of space or zodiacal longitude in every sign of the zodiac. There are 12 of those signs, so 12 times 30 equals the 360 degrees of the circle, which is the zodiac. It is the space around the earth measured in the ecliptic. Knowing the exact position by degrees of the planets within the zodiac allows for the use of aspect analysis. That's a vocabulary term that means an examination of the geometrical relationships of the celestial bodies within the circle of the zodiac. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. There are two kinds of those aspects. One is as they exist in the natal chart, and the other is as they are created by the moving planets in comparison to the positions they had at the time of birth. So what's interesting about Lee Spiegel's chart is that, of course, he's got a very strong emphasis in the sign of Taurus, which is astrologically associated with or ruled by the planet Venus. The planet of Venus is therefore so strong in this chart, and it links to the ability to create beauty, to create charm, and to create entertainment. And he certainly did that throughout the course of his life. Also, he has a very nice relationship between Saturn and Uranus, with Saturn at 29 degrees of Leo, the creative performer sign, in a 60-degree relationship with Uranus in Gemini, the sign of communication. So he has a 60-degree arc. It's just a little bit less than that. It's actually about 59 degrees, 61 degrees arc between those two, but it still qualifies as a sextile. And that really is a reflection of his intent to come and create that beauty through this harmonious self-expression, through music and through entertainment arts and through educational methods. Gemini, where his Uranus position is an educational sign. It deals with the mind and the processes of thought and learning how to analyze things and how to express them through language and how to analyze through numbers. It's a wonderful intellectual energy, the sign of Gemini. And that Saturn-Uranus sextile between Saturn in Leo and Uranus in Gemini, I think, really describes much of the dynamic that drove this particular incarnation for Lee Spiegel and describes his artistic and communicative abilities. So let's take a look now at some of the points in time that were so important for him. 1975 was a really big year for him. He was just in his late 20s. Actually, he was 25, 6, and 7 in this period of time. In 1975, I guess he was 25 and 26. That year was really outstanding for him. One of the things that happened for him that year is that he had a dramatic UFO sighting on the East Coast in North Carolina, in the coastal area of North Carolina, near Lumberton, North Carolina, which is the traditional homeland of the Lumbee Indians in that area. And he was there with a bunch of ufologists, and he, with several other people, including law enforcement agents. There we are. Had this extraordinary sighting. Thank you, Mr. Producer Man. Right here we have Lee Spiegel on the left, having an excited conversation about UFOs. So in 1975, that happened for him. And in that year, transiting Pluto was making a perfect trine to his Gemini Mercury from 9 Libra to 9 Gemini. And that only happens once in a lifetime for a couple of years. It's there for a couple of years because Pluto is a very slow-moving planet. But it's certainly an influence in his life at that point. At the same time, he moved into producing all kinds of things for major media. In 1975, it was a documentary record album for CBS titled The Credibility Factor, which was advertised on prime time national TV. Mind you, he was still in his 20s when this happened in the year 1975. Neptune was opposing his Mercury as well, from 9 Sagittarius to 9 Gemini. And Neptune can be a very visionary influence, opening the way to experiences of the spirit world or the world beyond. And certainly in 1975 with Neptune opposing his natal Mercury. Lee Spiegel experienced that with his Lumberton, North Carolina UFO encounter. 1978 was a big year for Lee Spiegel. That year was when he had what is called his Saturn return. That's a very important point in the life journey of any individual. And for him, it really brought some major developments. He began producing, writing, and hosting radio programs for NBC Radio with the content focused on UFOs and other unexplained phenomenon. So his Saturn return was occurring at around 29 degrees Leo. In fact, it was exact in November of 1977, January of 1978, and July of 1978, setting the stage for these major developments in his life. Many astrologers think the Saturn position by sign shows the primary type of career, or profession, or work that the soul intends to engage upon in any given life. And in the sign of Leo, the sign connected with art, creativity, performance, and celebrity status, it's likely going to have something to do with the entertainment field. Yeah, here's Lee, second from the left, also in 1978 when he produced a presentation at and for the United Nations on the UFO phenomena. Second from the left again, there's Lee Spiegel. Jacques Vallée is also in that picture, second from the right. Yeah. So when all this was happening, transiting Pluto was making a conjunction to Lee Spiegel's Neptune in the diplomacy and peacemaking sign of Libra. And here he is in the world's foremost forum designed for that purpose, the United Nations. Yeah, transiting Pluto conjunct his natal Neptune at 13 degrees of Libra. That too is a once in a lifetime kind of event. Astrologically, it lasts a year and a half to a couple of years, but that's it for that pocket, so he really made the most of that. In that same year, he began writing for the prestigious cutting-edge magazine Omni, and set about becoming a fantastic writer in that context. The next big year for him was 1982, when he began his Edge of Reality radio shows for WNBC in New York, and at that point transiting Neptune at 27 degrees of Sagittarius, was opposing his natal Uranus at 28 degrees Gemini, and would become exact over the years that he was, the first few years that he was producing that Edge of Reality show. In 2010 and through 2017, the scene changed. Well, here we are at, around this same period of time, maybe a little bit earlier. This looks like this is 80s and 90s. Yeah, Edge of Reality time. Here he is with some pretty famous celebrity figures attesting to his Saturn and Leo status. Yeah, and also he's got the leonine hair. Saturn and Leo is much in evidence here. Huffington Post became the next scene. I think, Mr. Producer Man, we've got a picture for, here we are at the Huffington Post. At this point, transiting Uranus at 28 degrees Pisces, making an exact square to his natal Uranus position at 28 Gemini, catapulted him into the journalistic environment. And the opportunity was there too, with transiting Neptune at 28 Aquarius, exactly trying his natal Uranus at 28 of Gemini. And he became a science and UFO writer for the influential Huffington Post. Now, that particular assignment or involvement or phase of his soul expression came to a close when Saturn at 28 degrees Sagittarius opposed his Uranus at 28 Gemini at the end of that period in 2017. Now, 2012 was also a red letter year for Lee Spiegel. In that year, he was given the International UFO Congress Researcher of the Year award. Very important recognition for the work that he had already done for so many decades and the truths that he had articulated so well and attractively. In 2012, the astrological power behind all this was transiting Pluto at 7 Capricorn in precise trine to his Mars at 7 degrees of Taurus, an earth sign trine, bringing all that glory and power down right to the tangible level. Pluto, transiting Pluto, trine his natal Mars in 2012. In 2020, the scene changed again, and Spiegel was involved in co-writing and co-producing a documentary with the influential filmmaker James Fox. This was The Phenomenon, and it was that same situation. No, it was different. Transiting Uranus in Taurus, not Pluto. Transiting Uranus conjunct his Mars in Taurus when he worked on that documentary with James Fox. Yeah, that was in 2020. And in 2021, he moved over to UNX magazine and became the managing editor, and also brought over his Edge of Reality wonderful radio show to the UNX Digital Broadcasting Network. Content on that show included UFOs, cryptozoology, the paranormal, and more. Again, it was transiting Uranus, 7 Taurus, conjunct his natal Mars, also at 7 Taurus. Right now, the eulogies and the memoriams are coming up and being shown various places, including the MUFON website, which has an article on Lee Spiegel's life and contribution to ufology up now. And there's an excellent biography in the September issue of Margie Kay's UNX magazine. So for all of you who have subscriptions to the UNX magazine, page right on over there and read about Lee Spiegel, and you'll see these same points reiterated there. If you haven't already subscribed, you can do so on the UNX website, and you really ought to. I'll tell you, that publication is just packed with useful information for people who are intent to stay in the know on the UFO, UAP, and paranormal issues. Well, as you can see, Lee Spiegel had a powerful astrological chart, and he used the power that was in that chart to the maximum. He's a good example for all of us and an inspiration of how you can use your talents to make a big difference in the world. He did that fearlessly. His Saturn was in the sign of Leo, the courageous, powerful lion who roars out his truth no matter what happens. The sun in his chart at 18 degrees of Taurus was also square Pluto, like Saturn in Leo. And that represents the challenge of dealing with resistance or even direct opposition from the mass or prevailing point of view. And yet he persisted. So again, I say this study of the astrology behind the recent incarnation of Lee Spiegel is a good example for all of us to follow and to continue to have a look at and see how he did it. Take a lesson from his life, take a page from his book, and do what we can in our own places to use our talents and to make a positive difference where we are. He certainly did. Next up, Saturn in Pisces and the role of the subconscious. Saturn entered Pisces earlier this year. It was in March of 2023, and it stays there for about 2.5 years. So it's with us now. We're existing within the Saturn in Pisces field right now. Pisces, like every sign in the zodiac, represents a spectrum of characteristics, all the way from the wonderful, down through the sort of average, down to the problematic and troublesome. Yeah, every astrological archetype represents a spectrum of characteristics, yet they're identifiable within that spectrum. Every astrological sign represents a function within the circle of the zodiac, and we need all those signs to represent wholeness. So Pisces plays an important role in the zodiac. There's nothing wrong or deficient with any of the signs of the zodiac. They all play an important role in the wholeness and the totality, which is represented by the circle of the zodiac. And they're all worth learning about, and they're all worth experiencing in their own way, right? But each one has a certain characteristic. Pisces is a water sign. So you get all the good and the bad of the water characteristic. It's flexible, it's adaptable, but it has no structure, and that's the issue. With Pisces, one has to create some structure while benefiting from the capacity to adapt and flex and change and mutate. Pisces is one of the mutable signs, along with Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius, and they're all strong in the capacity to adapt to the difficulties and challenges of life and go around problems and all of that kind of thing. But sometimes they lack coherent structure and a sense of kind of continuity or fixed purpose. Yeah, so that's part of the arrangement here. And with Pisces, all of the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, deal with the sensitivity of the human nature deep within the deep subconscious area. The air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, deal with the top of the mind, with the intellect, with the discursive thinking power, with logic and rationality, but not the water signs. They deal with the dreaming self, with the trance self, with the hypnotized self, with the subconscious, which is deep in our field of knowing. And it contains all the imagery and reflections of the past, including past lives. All that is associated with the water element. So when Saturn is in any sign, currently it's in Pisces, but when Saturn is in any sign, it brings a focus to that sign. It's sort of a pointing in that direction, saying, pay attention to this. I want you, humanity, all of you, to have a look at this and experience this and learn what you can. So Saturn in Pisces affects all of humanity, all of us. We're all in the field of Saturn and Pisces currently. Saturn constricts or crystallizes or even condenses whatever it touches. So it's operating that kind of effect in the field of Pisces right now. In other words, it's kind of constricting or limiting the field of the water function, the emotions and the subconscious. It's constricting us to pay attention there, and also holding it back a little bit, and maybe creating some difficulties in the subconscious area. Pisces, with lack of structure, can oftentimes correlate to the sense of impotence or powerlessness, inability to get done what one needs to get done or to make a difference in the world. Negatively, Pisces is associated with the state of helplessness or even victimization. And we have a choice when Saturn is in Pisces, whether we're going to go that route or some other route with Pisces. Now, on the high end, Pisces is the capacity to connect with universal truths and consciousness through the deep inner meditative trance state or hypnosis. So with Saturn in Pisces, a very positive direction we can take would be to attend to the function of the subconscious, our beliefs, what we believe about ourselves, and check them out carefully. Are my beliefs serving me? Do I believe that the world is going to crash and come to an unpleasant end? Is that what I'm believing on? Is that helping me? Is that helping me manifest the successes today that I want? The positive relationships, the money, the success, the good feelings, the celebration that I want. Is that helping? Well, you get to make your own decision. What about my beliefs about the economy? If I believe it's going to crash tomorrow, the digital dollar is going to destroy everybody's happiness and subject everybody to unending injustice and torture, If I think about that every day, what kind of reality is that manifesting for me? Is that helping me to share my best talents and make a difference in the world? Each person gets to decide. But those are the kinds of questions that we should be asking ourselves under Saturn in Pisces. What about my deep subconscious beliefs? Are they helping me manifest the life that I desire to lead? That's the issue, and that's the question with Saturn in Pisces now and for the next couple of years. So for the foreseeable future, you just put your setting on. I need to check my subconscious beliefs and make sure they're serving the objectives that I actually really want to reach and want to experience. So I put it to you that way. Shall we choose the belief in devastation, destruction, hopelessness, and victimization? Or shall we choose to believe in the power of the subconscious to drive us towards the manifestations of the things that we really desire? I put that to you, star friends, and I'll bring it back in future episodes. We'll talk about this some more. It's ongoing. Saturn is currently in Pisces, and our most recent full moon, which was just last week, Wednesday, August the 30th, really brought that to our attention because the full moon was conjunct Saturn astrologically. Yeah. So you can go back and look at that point in time and learn from the Book of Life about what you may have become aware of during that period. We're at the end of our time for Starspeak tonight. I appreciate everyone who has tuned in to listen to this, and I invite you to come back next week and learn more about the astrological energies we're all experiencing. This is Maureen Richmond for Starspeak and the UNX Digital Broadcasting Network, signing off for tonight. And remember, stay starry.